Hello, everyone. This is Rajesh Pichaimani, and I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. In this session, I'm going to do a walkthrough of a tutorial for the AWS Transfer Family Web App feature that was recently introduced in the reInvent 2024. So let's get this started. The agenda is we're going to talk about the tutorial overview in brief, and then switch to the console to actually walk through in the console, and finally conclude with the references. This is a newly published tutorial which walks you through the various steps that is involved in setting up the Transfer Family web app feature. The end result of this capability is that users will be able to upload the files to the appropriate S3 bucket through the web-based app. And that's what we are going to see as the tutorial walks through these steps. To access this tutorial, the QR code is listed in this top right corner as well. So let me switch to the console and walk through the steps. I have two screens in parallel to actually walk through the steps. So this is the main page of the tutorial. Here, it starts with the introduction, providing an overview of the web application feature in the transfer family. This is a simple architecture that we will be walking through right now. Assume we have a user that has been authenticated by the AWS IAM Identity Center. He or she will be able to upload the bucket, the files to the S3 bucket, to the appropriate S3 bucket through the transfer family web app endpoint that we will be creating very shortly. There are 5 different tasks and the steps, and I have created the tab for each of them. It starts with creating the web app, setting the S3 bucket and the cross-origin resource sharing. The third one is creating an instance and access grants. Finally, validating the whole end-to-end workflow. And last but not the least, the cleaning up of the resources. Okay. Going to the task 1 here, it starts with creating a web app. As you're seeing here in this tutorial, you can click here and expand this to see the different steps. And we will be going through in just a second. And once the step 1 is completed, we will go to step 2 in this task. In the interest of time, I have created the end-to-end workflow. However, I will walk through the steps of the creation until the last menu, and then I will cancel it. So creating a web app, it starts with selecting the transfer family here. You can see AWS transfer family and click on here. It will take you to the page just like you're seeing here. Creating a web app. The steps walks through the details here in this task. We can say we'll be using an identity center since it's already been connected. It's already checked marked, but if you're using this for the very first time, you will be selecting that as well. Creating and new service role, web app units, leave it as it is. In the tag, you can say demo, add tag, click next. Here you can choose some logo pertaining to your organization. This is optional as well. Select next. This is the final step of reviewing and creation, right? Just like in most of the AWS services, after we configure the different steps, the final one is to review and then go ahead and create a web app. I have already created one, and this is the active one that is available. Here you can click this web app. After you complete this portion of successfully completing the creation of the web app, then we can add the user, and that is done by clicking on this one. Assign users and groups. We can go through this here. There are two categories. Either you can add a brand new user or get an existing user. Since we have integrated this transfer family to IAM Identity Center, whatever we have added will be reflected in the Identity Center, which I will show you in just a second. Or if you want to create one, we can create here either. Both options are there. Here it says choose add user, create next. Here you will be filling up the details pertaining to your new user creation, give a username, all the additional items needed for the validation, right? You will have to provide an email address that you will be able to access for verification. And then click next. And this user will be attached to the IAM Identity Center, as well as it will be attached back to this Transfer Family web app. You will start seeing the new user added in this section. Okay. Before we move to the next step task, take a note of this user ID, and this will be needed in the task number 4. Okay. These 2 steps conclude the task number 1 as listed in this page. Okay. Going back to summarizing, we started creating the web app in the transfer family menu, created the web app, and once the web app has been created, we created a user and assigned it to this particular web app. Okay. Next, we will move on to the task number 2. Moving here. In this part, we are going to go and create the S3 bucket. For the purpose of this demonstration, I have created a bucket named here. Once the bucket has been created with all the defaults, we can also go ahead and create a bucket just like this one. Create bucket, give a bucket name. Bucket name must be globally unique. Leave all the settings as default and then create bucket. Okay. And that's how this particular bucket has been created. As I will go down to this step, creation of the bucket. Another one is step here in this task is setting up the cross-origin resource sharing. Go to permissions, scroll down to the bottom, cross-origin resource sharing. Click on edit. If this is going to be the first time, you will find this empty. You click edit, which will make this section editable. You come back to this tutorial and copy this entire section. It will copy all of these lines as outlined here. Okay. Once you have copied, bring back cursor here and then paste it. Before you save, you have to make one change here. In the allowed origins, this is a placeholder here in this tutorial, access endpoint. This information is obtained from the previous step when creating a transfer family web app. This is the access point. We have to copy and paste it in the placeholder access endpoint, okay, as an allowed origin. So once it is pasted, you can save this and come back to the main menu of the bucket. One caution that the tutorial highlight is And copy pasting the access endpoint, do not include the trailing slash. Otherwise, you will have encountered some errors later down the line. Okay. So to summarize this task number 2, all of them were focused in the S3 section. First was creating the bucket with a globally unique name. The second one is on the permissions, creating the cross-origin resource sharing creation and allowing the origin, which was identified in the web app menu. Okay. Going back to task number 3, one more setting in the S3 itself, which is the access grants. This is the step, creating an access grant. One thing I want to point out is you can create only one access grant per region per account. Since I have already created, I'm unable to show from scratch. However, the steps are very simple as highlighted in this task on the step here. Here, we will be, if I go back to this view details, what we are trying to do is registering the IAM Identity Center to this access grant. IAM Identity Center information is here, and you can also get it from this web app as well. Okay. Which means that when a user tries to access the S3 bucket, he or she gets authenticated through the Identity Center credentials. Okay. That's the first step in creating the access grant. 2 additional steps is registering a location. For this, once you create the access grant in the main menu, this grant tab as well as the location tab would be showing empty. You will have to set up this information in the location tab. Location indicates pointing back to the S3 bucket, what we have created in the previous step. This is the S3 bucket. Okay, that's a location where the users will be redirected to upload their files. And the grants is again creating grant. We are pointing to the S3 bucket, providing a permission read and write. And we are giving read and write to whom? It is to the directory identity from the IAM Identity Center, because here is where we have the users and in reality groups as well, right? They are getting authenticated through this identity center. And as I mentioned, it can be either a user or a group. In this case of our example, it's going to be a user, which was created in the very first step, right? The user in ID is needed, copied here and pasted, which means that we are granting the read-write access to this user ID of the type coming from the identity center. Okay, and then creating the grant. And again, this whole credential is pointing back to the S3 location that we've created in the task number 2. And that's what the whole step refers to. Grant scope is all the S3 bucket, this S3 bucket. Okay. That is the list of all the steps in task number 3 as listed in this tutorial. Okay. Now coming to the task 4, We have tied all the strings together. In the first step, we have created the transfer family web app, cross-region access in S3 bucket, creating the instance and pointing back to the S3 bucket and integrating the identity centers user. Now is the verification and validation. Access to the transfer family web app. We go to the transfer family in the task number 1. This is the HTTPS URL. When we click this, it takes to the page, something that looks like this. This is a browser-based way of uploading the files. So any user who has a credential, appropriate credential, will be able to see this one as a home page, home directory. And from here, the user can create a folder or upload a file, right? So this is an example folder that was just created prior to the demo. And create folder. Folder created. Can go back and upload some files in this folder. Select on the ellipsis, upload, add folder. I'm uploading 2 files here. All the files have been uploaded. Okay. Now that we have uploaded the files, the next one is to validating if the files have gone to the respective destination directory, right? So here, going back to this primary S3 bucket, doing a refresh, we see the test folder that was just created and the 2 files that were uploaded. This concludes the end-to-end entire process. Now going back to this main page of this tutorial, now I'm playing the role of this authenticated user, which was authenticated through the IAM Identity Center, which is referenced in the access grant as well. And the grant also points to the S3 bucket, right? Now I know this web app endpoint where I'm accessing this location from the browser. I have uploaded the files, and based on my authentication and authorization, I'll be able to narrow down the files and the folders and the prefixes to upload my information. That's what we have validated here successfully. Okay. And finally, do not forget to clean up the resources. The first one here is, this is the first step that was created in task number 1. So this tutorial recommends to delete it by clicking the delete button here. The next one is deleting the access grants. And we can delete here, delete instance. Before doing that, you can also delete the location as well as the grant here. And finally, we can also clean up the entire S3 bucket, which was created as a part of this demo. And congratulations, you have completed successfully the end-to-end workflow of the AWS Transfer Family web app. Now back to the slides. I want to conclude the session with some references. The first one is the actual tutorial that we just mentioned. The second QR code is the official documentation of S3 Access Grants instance. where we have created the location information, we have created the grant information, tying the user information to the appropriate S3 bucket, read, write, permissions, etc. And last but not the least is this transfer family web app capability officials documentation. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you found this session useful. Happy building in AWS. Bye for now.